saying the Nigerian voiceover artists have evolved faster than the industry. There were others before me. One of the people I mentioned earlier, Omawanye Oriono, he was fantastic at promos. I had a mix of US, Ahide had a BBC background, and then Lord Frank came from the US. So when we stormed the market, it was fresh. I don't know why, but I kept on saying to myself, I can touch that range that he can touch now. Malta Guinness, Coca-Cola, and See, the problem is whatever is happening to Nigeria as a society trickled down into each of the different industries that exist, the voiceover industry being one of them. You have people who are more concerned about recognition than policy. They have more people who are more concerned about how much money they can get off the government than policy. Nigerian voiceover artists over time have researched on their own, grown on their own, and now they're at a level where, wait, I don't reach here, but the industry is here, and I need this industry to be here with me so that we can move. The world has a standard. You're trying to meet that standard, but then you look back home and then you're like, oh my shell.
Hi everyone, welcome to 2025. Like, come on, I know it's February already, and I'm saying welcome to 2025. That's because we are literally recording the first episode for this year, which makes it the first episode of season 4 of the Everything Voiceovers podcast. And yes, it's dropping this February. And although we've got a couple of episodes for December and January, but those were bonus episodes, so it's okay to say welcome to season 4 of the Everything Voiceovers podcast, the African perspective. Hi, Serah.
Hey guys, hi Tcode. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year, Tcode. Oh yes, we are here again, and it's such an exciting time, and I can't wait for you to see what our lineup for the season, the conversations we're about to have. It's about to be an amazing year and an amazing season as well, and I hope you're keen into it.
Yep, starting with today's episode where we have a great guest. I've been avoiding using the word legendary since because I know he's going to counter me, but right before I get to introducing him, and then we get talking about his journey and the voiceover industry at large. Just want to how was the holidays for you, Serah? Like in a jiffy, what was it like for you? And how are you preparing for the new year or for 2025 voiceover career?
Well, yeah, I mean, the holidays were definitely full of rest for me, and I had to be very deliberate about it. I had to deliberately, take rest. Because as a creative, there's hardly any work-life balance. Sometimes you get gigs, the times where you say you want to rest, or you get gigs when, they just come unexpectedly. You get projects that you love to work on. So sometimes you just have to be very intentional about your rest. So I tried to wrap up all my projects that were pending very early in the month of December so that I could go on a break and give my voice and just give my voice a rest and also allow my creative juices to flow when I come back. And now we're in January, which came pretty quickly, but yeah, it was a great holiday. And in January I'm just trying to make sure the demos look right, my headshots look right, my website looks right, everything that's supposed to be working should be working, all external links, because if somebody's shutting down a link or taking down a video, they're not going to tell you. You're the one that has to make sure that that link that's in your website that leads somewhere, it still leads there. So yeah, just check up on your website, checking up on my website, and what else? I think that's pretty much it for now. And just preparing my mind for rejection, because I feel like voiceover is that field that no matter what height you get to, you're still gonna get rejected.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, I would, this is something I would also love to hear from our guest for today. Like, is there any point in time where you don't deal with rejection in your career? Because, I still feel like I've got a long way to go. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, let me talk when we bring him up. Certainly, and I just want to respond to what you said and also answer the question I asked you. The holiday for me was quite eventful, because holiday for most people would start, say, mid-December. And mid-December, I was in Port Harcourt for the Voiceover Connect conference, organized by Robbie Kaine, who was one of the last guests last year at on the podcast. And it was such a beautiful event. For the first time in that region of Nigeria, there was a voiceover conference, and it had people come. It had even the government, sent a representative, and they were very much involved. Like, it was so nice to see these young folks, animators, movie producers, and voiceover artists all together, content creators, learning about voiceover. So I felt so good about it. And then I came back to my base, and it was all family and fun and all of that. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Maybe not the kind of rest that I wanted. If I could choose, I would have wanted to just be isolated and just relax and like, okay, no noise, nothing. But well, I still had a great time with family. And coming into 2025, I knew that 2025 is full of responsibilities. To whom much is given, much is expected, right? So from the second day of 2025, I was already planning, deciding what was going to happen for the entire year. Calendars were already set. Yeah, you mentioned demos. I had already created at least 2 demos in December, and for me that would be good to start with. My website is almost completed, so by the end of January or February I will be launching it. All the organizations and associations and the ones I run myself, I needed to start drafting plans for everything. And one of the things I want to do this year is to ensure that I make decisions fast. I don't overthink things. I send the letters when I need to send them. I invite the guests when I need to invite them, because work, like they say, work no they finish. So the earlier I'm able to do things on time, the better it is for me, the more I can have rest time to myself. So you may pick 1 or 2 things from all I'm saying, or what Serah as well has said, but the point is we're trying to like give you guys a view of how it's going on for us, and hopefully you can also use that to plan the rest of your 2025. One last thing I want to mention is branding. It's important for you to represent or put a, we had a webinar at the end of last year, which was organized by the Voiceover Workshop. And I loved the webinar because it was like everybody coming together, both the associations, the agencies, the voiceover artists, and everybody. And a statement was made that I would not forget. Eniola Keshinro NK, she made that statement. She said, we're now in an era where before they would say your work will speak for you. Now it's no longer your work speaking for you. You have to speak for your work. Right. So you're at it right now. If you don't speak for your work, like, oh, I'm a voiceover artist, right? Sure. Speak for it. Like, let the whole world know what you do. Let them see it in your bio. Let them see it in your profile on social media, everywhere. So that's my advice to anybody listening this year. Put yourself out there. Put your work out there. Brand yourself and make the mistakes early, fix them, and keep going. Yeah. So guys, that's it for the introductions. Again, welcome to season 4 of the podcast. We have great plans, great guests. We're touring not just Nigeria, but extending to other parts of Africa this season. And
Absolutely.
We're starting from the home front. Yep. We've got one of the big bosses in the house. He's an Odogu, right? And he has influenced our careers, myself and Serah. So I'd like Serah to start to do the honors, right? Like, talking about or introducing him, and I'll also compliment you but yeah, I want to hear to you who Eric is and introduce him to us.
See, even though the network tried to take it away, I'm going to say it again. I'm so excited that we have Eric Maximus in the studio today. He is a legend. Roll your eyes, Mr. 25. You cannot talk about voiceover in the Nigerian voiceover industry and not mention Eric. Eric has been there since days of, but he said there were no demos even then. But my earliest knowledge of the whole thing is even like just back then when you'd put your demos in CDs and go submit them at agencies. Now, Eric was there before that. And I remember getting into voiceover and looking for ways to improve what my social media looks like, just learning from different voiceover artists. Eric was one of those people that I looked up to and still look up to. And he's done such amazing things for the industry. He definitely should be recognized. I have so much respect for you. And I'm so excited that you're here on the podcast.
Thank you.
Eric. Yeah. So let me take it from where she stopped. You deserve your flowers,
Yes.
but I used the phrase and I said Eric was there in the days of plantation boys. Like it's only Nigerian OGs that would know what that means, right? But Eric has been in the voiceover industry for 19 years now, and A-list voice. A-list means you are among the top three or top five of any industry, and you can't contest that Eric is an A-list. He has done voiceovers for the top brands you can think of. Usually when I read his profile, I'm tempted to say he has worked for brands like Pepsi, Guinness, MTN, African Magic, Techno,
It's
Visa.
more of who hasn't he worked for.
Exactly. There's no point. You could just go on and list 50 top brands or 100.
Mm-hmm.
It's a question of which
No,
top
you can even
brand
just
has
go
he
ahead and
worked
mention the brand he hasn't worked for.
So
Because
because
that would
next
be
time we'll be like, Eric has worked for all the top brands except this one we just even the new brands that are just coming out. Did they reach out to Eric now? So I mean, is an OG and thank you so much for all you've done and your generation as well. Shout out to people like you, Choma BBB, Mazino Appeal, King E, Seun Shobor. There's just a plethora of people. Lord Frank, Ahide Adum. I like to, respect these people because they paved the way for our generation and we're doing what we can. So without further ado, welcome to the Everything Voiceovers podcast, Eric. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. In fact, I was like, really? Me? Here? Okay.
Yeah, you here. And
you here.
Eric is such a great personality, but we want to talk about your voiceover journey, how you started, and we also use this opportunity to reflect about our industry, how far we've come, how much we've grown, what are the challenges we're still facing. And from your own point of view, being someone who has been in the industry for this long, you would have a lot of stories. As a matter of fact, you're one of those people that you have gist for days, like you were there. You've been active. Your 19 years wasn't, you used 9 years to play ball and then you used 10 years to now do it. You were practically there.
Wait. Let me correct something. First of all, I'm 25 years old. So by the time you subtract 19 from 25 years, that should tell you how long I've been doing this. So if you don't believe me, that's your business. Anybody who doesn't believe me, I'm 25. That's your business. I'm 25 years old. Thank you.
Let's just say Eric was one of those who knew his calling.
Let's allow Eric.
Yeah, let's allow him. So Eric, please tell us about how you got into the voiceover business, and take it.
It's a very long story. It's a very long story because I didn't just stumble into voiceovers. I'd gone through different processes all through my life. I was a singer for most parts of my life. I started singing at age 6, but then in 1993 I joined a professional choir, the Lazo Chorale. My uncle was running it. He was then the orator in Unilag, and the head orator of Unilag, and he was there for about 38 years. He just came back from the UK. He worked with the BBC. He was the first music professor in Nigeria, but also had backgrounds in theater. And he wrote an opera which I was part of in the 90s. It's called Nights in Bethlehem, and it was from that opera I learned a lot about acting. Then music shaped my voice, and then fast forward to my university days, I was given a passage in the Bible. It was an Old Testament passage. Because of what I had learned from my uncle, me and my two left leg, we did not remember that it is Bible reading. So when it got to God's part, I characterized God, I characterized Moses, I characterized Sarah, I characterized some other people, and so I would change my voice when it got to each character. And then when I raised my hand to say, "This is the word of the Lord," I noticed nobody opened their Bibles. They were all just staring. Now, it was cool, but it was also creepy because I was like, why y'all staring? We did church, but I want lynch me. But then, it made sense when I went back to my seat and I was like, there's no point opening Bible now. For Kukuma just act out the whole Bible for us. And then after the church, a young man walked up to me. He was working with because I went to university at Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Oka. So obviously it was in the East. And this guy came to me with an Igbo accent. And I think he was working with the radio station they had then in school. And he said, have you ever tried voiceover? Sorry? Have you ever tried voiceover? What's that? And now, when you put your oh, you mean voiceovers? No, I haven't tried that before. I was like, well, from what I've seen you here, you know how to do it. And then fast forward to 2006, I was an intern at MTech Communications, one of the foremost communications companies in Nigeria. That's vast providing communications companies in Nigeria. They provided in the early days services for MTN, then Econet, and upcoming Celtel, or was it? I think Celtel or something. No, that was Econet and Glow. And then I heard there was a studio upstairs. I was on the third floor. There was a studio upstairs, and me now, the music guy in me. Once again, I took my two left leg and I climbed upstairs to see the studio. And Il Rhymes just finished recording Music Africa promos. I don't know if you remember what Music Africa was like. Because I can't, as Tcode has said that I know I was the time of Plantation Boys. But if you know Music Africa, that's Kenny Ogungbe, D1, Dayo Adene. So he had just done some promos, and the next set of promos were for a brand called Hypno Shirts. So Deji Adeelure was the guy who was trying to do the adverts, while Chimere Mbonu, who is now the East African CEO for MTech, was producing it. And it sounded odd to me. Even though Deji has a beautiful sounding baritone, I was like, no. And I said, sorry, no verse. Shouldn't we say it like, it's Hypno Shirts and it's up for grabs? And then Chimere grabbed my hand, ran me downstairs to my boss, and then said, I need him now. And I was like, Eric, what did you do? I just went to the studio. I finished my work for the day. I just went to the studio. And then fast forward to 2025, and it's 19 years already.
I just want to get a grasp of what that timeline was. 1993, you got into the choir.
As in
You also
professional choir.
Professional choir.
Yes.
But it was 2006 that you had your first stint at Voiceover, because you got into a studio and you just did a little show of what it should sound like. What year was it where you did that reading in the church? That
2002.
Oh, wow. Wow. So what were your early influences then? How did you, like I was going to say, some people have a great voice, like they talk okay, but the act of presenting or voice over, that isn't a function of just having a good voice. Like what you said when you said, I've forgotten how you said it, the brand name, Grab or something like that. Something must have influenced you. Were you always watching ads or listening to radio so well, or who and what were your early influences?
Okay, so I didn't know any names at the time, but I was a child of the Domino stores era. Domino, Domino, there to serve you best. If you don't know the songs, not best. It's my 25 years. I've heard a lot of things, but that was Auntie Daphne on that, and then there was Ben Murray Bruce on Silverbird. We are number one. And then, then of course, when you listen to radio, you'll hear, this is JAJ, the Top Gun, jamming with Chooks the Spaceman. And then, those were, so you would hear radio. Yes, radio was a thing. And then, of course, I was a big BBC person. So I watched a lot of James Bond, so there was a lot of vodka martini, shaken, not stirred. Sean Connery. I don't know if I'm calling old people's names. I just love vintage stuff. I'm a young, I'm 25, but I just love a lot of young people's stuff. And then of course there was the legendary, you call them beautiful. You call them refrigerators. We call them beautiful. Higher thermal makes things better, makes better things. These were the things that they influenced me a lot. And I didn't really watch, or I wasn't really a keen fan of Nigerian programs, but for some odd reason, I just loved, their adverts. I still have memories of a lot of adverts in my head. And I didn't know what they were. I just wanted to do those things. And that's what I ended up doing. I paid attention, when I realized I was doing voiceovers, I paid attention to some people, and then some voices stuck because I used to watch a lot of movie trailers. On LaFontaine. That was that's the at that time. He made it. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, in a world, in a place, in a time, in a place before time. Everything was in a world, or in a time, or in a place, in outer space, in the year 2050. There was always, and he coined it, and it became a thing. And now I knew, because even though I sing bass now, at the time I wasn't singing bass. And I knew what my voice texture was like, but it didn't stop me from trying to sound the way I felt it should sound. And there was a guy then also, George De Hoyo. We have a very similar voice pattern. So he was, whenever they had kids programs and goofy stuff, that was him. Disney presents a blah, 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 and blah, 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 and this starring blah, and blah, and blah, and blah. Grab your copies. Go to the store. And then he would do, adverts is done. And you're like, now that's what I want. Now that's what I want. No, I couldn't do the, world. It's not as if I couldn't, bend the voiceover, but those were my influences. Then in Nigeria, it was Femi Showolu, it was Bola Makinde, it was Daphne Atera Roberts. Then Daphne Atera Roberts, now Daphne Okagwe. It was Atitosan Ubeye, who happens to be the big aunt to someone we know mutually. That's Stephanie Ubeye.
Yeah,
those were the people that defined voiceovers for me growing up. So pretty much, yeah.
Wow, those were like the OGs before the OGs.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Before the OGs.
Yeah, thank you for that rundown. It gives us a deeper perspective to what voiceover was like in the 90s and early 2000s. And tell us about your growing into the industry, because that was how you got into the industry. But you can't be in this industry without understanding how ad agencies operated and the rates and perhaps the associations and how to market yourself, because I believe these were the great days where there wasn't even social media. So how did you
there was
word that this is what you... I mean, Facebook started when? Was it 2006? Oh yeah, well yeah, you had started.
Yeah, so before Facebook, there was High Five. There was To Go.
Yeah, that's true.
There was every
MySpace.
there was MySpace. Yes, I still have my MySpace account. I don't know why, if I still have my MySpace account. So, but they existed. But the thing is, I think it was, nobody saw it as an avenue for any other thing, because even as at 10 years ago, it was a taboo for a voiceover artist to put out their work on social media.
Why?
So,
in Nigeria?
No, worldwide.
Why? Why?
Because they felt that your website and your YouTube and your Vimeos, those were for such things. That social media was to be social. Exactly. Which is why when I was doing Chronicles of a Nigerian Voiceover Artist in 2017, I got, messages from foreign voiceover artists saying, no, don't do that. If you must do that, open up a separate page. There has to be a disparity between your social life and your work life. Let them come and ask me that now. Everybody has content. Everybody has content. And then, now when I don't stop my own I don't start. God is watching. God is watching. But, to put into context, what my journey was like, I didn't start mainstream voiceovers through agencies, because I was working with a communications firm. So the clients that I did voiceovers for were the clients we worked with regularly. So I would do a lot of promos for MTN, in terms of their callback tones, their ringtones, their promos for certain shows, so like Gold Ultimate Search, and we handled the interactivity. Then radio stations didn't have much of interactivity as well, so you were like, maybe you're doing ITV Benin. I did a lot of stuff for ITV Benin, a lot of stuff for Cool FM, Ray Power, Rhythm, promos like, to get this comedy for the day, text 33050 on your mobile phone. Text 33050 on your mobile phone. This service is available to MTN, Glow, and Zain customers. Brought to you by Vibe Downloads, powered by MTech. In fact, speaking about that, I was the one who started the whole powered movement in Nigeria. Yes.
Powered by.
Yes, that was me.
Wow.
Because everybody always said, brought to you by this, brought to you by that. But then
Later, if we say legend, you now say that.
I'm only 25 now. I'm only 25. I'm only
Powered by.
I've only been, I don't know just like. But the thing is, MTech wanted to be involved in all the promos they put out. So it was always brought to you by MTN, or brought to you by Glow, or brought to you by Vibe Downloads. And then I said, well, since we're a communications company and we're powering the service, why don't we just say powered by MTech? And they were like, no, don't do it. So the first project we worked on was something for Valentine's. That was 2008. And then, I was like, get serenaded with love this season. Win a special Valentine's treat. Text Val to 33050. This service is brought to you by Vibe Downloads, powered by MTech. Hi! You see the women that called into the service asking, sorry, who be the baba we do this thing? God. There was this thing I used to hate a lot. You sit down inside a bus. Then, I used to go to work with Danfo. You sit down in the bus, and then there were two ladies in front, and the radio was on, and they were hearing the adverts, and they were like, "Oh my God, I love this guy's voice." And I was about to tap one of them to say, but that was me. And then second one said, he must really have a lot of money, and my hand just hung. If I had that much money, I wouldn't be sitting in the same bus.
Oh my God.
Sometimes when I remember that situation, I was like, Nigeria, what have you done to me? But it was a crazy period. So, when I realized that I was heard in almost every African, as in West African and East African country, but I wasn't getting the traction I wanted. At this time, I had done over 1,000 voiceovers with MTech. And I was like, nope, it's time. It's time. Or let me say it the way Rafiki says it in Lion King. It's time. So I just, upped one day, and I had an event. And at the event, it was for one of the networks. I can't remember which one exactly, but I was doing the voice of God. I didn't know what the voice of God was. I was just doing the voice of God in the background. And then someone walked up to me and says, I love your voice, young man. You sound very good. Have you considered Avoir? And I was like, sorry? So, but from the way she was talking, I was like, what? I don't hear this voice before. And I was like, Domino Stars. And she was like, yes, that was me. That was many years ago. And that's when I realized that was Auntie Daphne. And she invited me to join Avoir. And I did. So I came to Avoir. And that's when the legends you hear about on radio and TV, you see them with your two korokoro eye. Isaac Moses, Shegu Arinze. The late, what's his name again? The king of pidgin that year. Domitila. I was like, wow. These people here, Ambrose, Ehiomohale. I was like, wait, now these people they here. So all of these people, now voice artists they be, and then, that's what I said to understand the model of advertising agencies. And then, of course, I did the whole CD thing, put my demos. I was using, I don't know if you remember Windows Media Player. I did that, fortunately. And then I put the jobs I had done inside, and I would go from agency to agency. So at that time, AAA had a website, but all the agencies did not have one. So if you wanted to reach the agency, you had to go to AAAN's website to get their addresses. And they didn't specify which agencies had studios and which ones didn't. So I copied all 300 and something agencies onto an Excel sheet. And I went from agency to agency, pitching myself to them. That's when I would get there and like, sorry, now only print media we they do. Sorry, oh, now media placements we they do. I'm like, ah. So my very first agency was STB McCann, and I went there and I realized when I got there that you couldn't see the producer without an appointment. So I did something crazy, which I would not admit on the internet for the sake of my safety. But it got me through the door, and I met some amazing people while I was there. One of them being Oma Voanye Orionu. He, hearing me a couple of times do a couple of projects, he was like, nope, you're too good to just be in this agency. And so he took me around to the agencies he worked with. And that was how I became as popular as I am. So at that point, I'm like a bird, I'll fly away, that kind of thing. So that's pretty much it.
Wow.
I told you I talk a lot. You didn't believe
Sarah, I don't
me.
know if you want to say something at this point.
Stunned, like
Same here.
like I said before, it's always so fascinating and humbling when you hear people's stories and journeys into voiceover and through of their time being in the industry. Yeah. I mean, it's insane. So how would you say, what's your perspective and what would you say about the evolution of voiceover in the Nigerian industry?
Okay, so let me put it this way. The Nigerian voiceover industry I would say the Nigerian voiceover artists have evolved faster than the industry. That's the best way I can put it. You see, the problem is whatever is happening to Nigeria as a society trickled down into each of the different industries that exist, the voiceover industry being one of them. You have people who are more concerned about recognition than policy. They have more people who are more concerned about how much money they can get off the government than policy. You have people who don't bother to look at what's happening on the outside, and they only concentrate on, how wonderful we are, propaganda. So Nigerian voiceover artists over time have researched on their own, grown on their own, and now they're at a level where, wait, I don't reach here, but the industry is here, and I need this industry to be here with me so that we can move. And it's a problem because you find out that we have projects left, right, and center, and the relevant bodies who should be involved are not involved. The relevant protections that should be in place are not in place. But the thing is, I salute the resilience of the average Nigerian voice actor because it takes a lot to survive in Nigeria. It does. It takes a lot. You're basically walking against the tide or against the tsunami. It's coming at you, and instead of you to run the opposite direction, as in it's coming, you're running towards it, because you don't have a choice. The world has a standard. You're trying to meet that standard, but then you look back home and then you're like, oh my shit. So that's pretty much what worries me about the Nigerian voiceover industry. But in terms of the Nigerian voice artists, I salute them because it takes a lot to be where we are today. We started off before South Africa. We started off before Kenya. Their industries are much bigger than ours, but our artists are still much better than theirs. They don't want to admit it, of course. They say it all the time, in private settings. But when you put a microphone in front of them and say it again, repeat it. So what? Repeat what? Did I say anything?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. So for instance, it was hard for me when I was discussing with Stephanie Cicerelli a couple of years ago. It was a conversation. It was a chat. It was hard for me to understand.
For context, the founder of
the co-founder of Voices.com. Voices.com. Yeah. But I was then advocating for more, visibility for African artists. And she kept on explaining to me that, 2016. So I was advocating because, at some point I got fed up with the system and I was like, you know what? Let me do my thing. Let me go out there. So I was meeting people left, right, and center. I didn't know who they were, but I didn't care. I was just meeting them, having conversations with them, chats, And then at some point, I wrote to Voices.com, and she was the one who replied by email. And I was advocating for more African presence and visibility on their platform. And then she explained to me, but what from our research, South Africa does all the voiceover stuff. That Nigeria is only a market. It's not really for production. And I was like, huh? I started to mention names of legends. I was like, those names you heard, they either worked for private companies or they worked for the government. And they were the people who pioneered voiceover in Africa. So which South African person is lying to you and telling you that everything, but then I realized that unfortunately what happened was that because they had a more regularized market, every brand coming to Africa would stop over at South Africa before going to any part of Africa. And so they assumed that all production was done in South Africa. We even made it worse. Advert agencies want to shoot video, they'll go to South Africa. They'll shoot commercial, South Africa. Music video, South Africa. So because they kept on taking everything to South Africa, what they didn't realize was that they were damaging the Nigerian market. So they only saw us as a consumer market, not a production market. And that affected us as voiceover artists too, because by the time I had conversations with people, and then I had an email exchange with Dan Levin. He was one of the bosses at suchavoice.com. He was the one who said to me that it's great that you're trying to, improve on yourself and, be a big hit. But it's also better if you can help and fix your own home industry. And that was when I was like, okay, stop. Let's go and fix home. Unfortunately, things didn't turn out as I planned, but it's still work in progress. That's pretty much what I see when it comes to the Nigerian voiceover industry.
So you've been around for as long as in the mid 2000s, where you had an encounter with Auntie Daphne, and I would say that would be maybe 2007, 8, right?
Yeah.
And so you joined Bravo at that period. Yeah. So from all you said, your career seemed to have started as you doing a 9 to 5 with communication companies. At what point did you say, okay, I'm going to resign to do voiceovers full time? Because I have to say, you are, like I've said before, one of those who inspired me to see the possibility of being a full-time voiceover artist. And when I saw that was actually a possible career path, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go for this. So what was that deciding? What made you decide you're going to do this? And when did that happen? And how did you pivot? Is it pivot or pivot? Where?
Pivot.
How did that happen?
Okay, so in 2011, I left the company, MTech. I was there for just about 5 years. They were taking a different direction, and I just felt they were trying to change their direction, and I felt it was a very drastic change, because they initially wanted to jump into the media space, which they messed up with, because they ended up, selling off ideas to the wrong people, who ended up setting up big platforms. I don't want to, shake certain tables, because now only one leg remained for the table leg. But, I left MTech. And when I left MTech, at the time I left MTech, I was already getting more work as a voiceover artist than I was even getting on my table as a product manager. At the time, I had climbed to product manager in MTech. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to go solo. I tried it for a few months. It was rough, but it was a good thing, because we had established friendships amongst networks, people in the networks. So the concept of, comedy, entertainment, jokes started to come up. There were services then where you would dial a certain short code and you would hear joke of the day, or you would hear health tips, or one of those things. So at that time, there was a lot of such content, being produced by the networks, but they didn't have voiceover artists who were interested in doing them. So I did a lot of those things. I did a lot of them, I didn't realize how many I had done, but that was the time, 2011. That's when I decided to go full-time, be a full-time voiceover artist, and it paid off.
So tell us about the era of home studios and how voiceover artists managed to work, the relationship with her.
Okay. So, when I look at Serah's studio, I look at your studio and I'm like, oh my God, see how fine studio can be. I have this construction. Let me turn my camera a bit. I have this construction here. I made it off a few materials. Now, at the time, So with my encounters with foreign voiceover artists, I realized that every time I was talking to these people, they were not communicating with me from production studios. They were talking to me from their home studios. So I was trying to find out, so what's the concept, having home studios? And they were like, for you to have a home studio, people have to trust you enough to produce your work. You have to be able to do this or do that. And I was like, that's fascinating. I would like to do that. I would like to have a home studio. So I realized at the time when I was working for advertising agencies, I had got to that point in my career where a lot of times I would self-direct. They would tell me, "Oh, Eric, okay, so try this script and tell me what you think." So they would give me a script. They'll give me the instructions on the brief on how they want it done. I would do it, and then they'll tell me, "Okay, Eric, do one of what you think it should sound like," and I would do that version. And then 9 times out of 10, my version was what the client would pick. So at that point, I realized that, okay, I can self-direct. And I was told in my conversations with the white people and my foreign friends that self-direction is the first key to having your own studio. Allah! So that's what I did. In 2016, I reached out to a friend of mine who already had a home studio. He's now relocated to the US. He has jackpot and left me here in the United States of Nigeria to the United States of America. Dimitri.
What's his name again? Oh, Dimitri. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Dimitri, yes. So please, Dimitri is a Nigerian. His name is Matthew Afolabi. But so Dimitri, I noticed he was recording from home, and I was like, "Yo, DM3, what's up now? Talk to me. How you get this equipment?" And then he hooked me up, and it turned out it was my ex-colleague who was importing, because we didn't have what you guys have now, where you can walk into a music store and buy certain microphones. We didn't have that. The only times you would find a music store that sold you condenser microphones was if you, as in like now. At the time, what you would find would be stores that sell the Shure SM microphones. Those small, the ones they use for. So that's what they had, So I had to order my microphone, and it was what's it called? It was the Focusrite I got, and when I got the Focusrite, it was my first set of gear. I got myself a laptop. So the room I'm in, the windows and doors are padded, but then I didn't have the padding, and there's a school just outside. So I took this hostel foam I put on my table, and I'll use a stick to wedge from my booth to the window so that the background noise of the school would not come in. But that's how I was recording. At some point, I used to record in my bedroom, use the whole clothes setup. But yeah, that's pretty much when I had my first home studio. I took a couple of tweaks over the years, and then finally, this bad boy.
Wow. I'm proud of you, Eric, I must say.
Thank you.
Thank you for... Yeah, you've remained relevant over the years. I recall, I think was like 3 or 4 years ago at the Voiceover conference, there was a session between you, Ahidi, and Lord Frank, whom we referred to, or the three of you referred to as the Three Musketeers, and
The Three Kings.
anchored it as the Three Kings. So one of the biggest discoveries in that conversation, it was a panel session, was that the three of you were doing 70%. Should I use the word allegedly now? But I know you have facts to back this up, so I would like
At
to
the
talk
time, there
about
were
that as
facts.
well.
At the time, there were facts.
Yes. So 70% of the jobs in the voiceover industry, like the voiceovers, the three of you were doing it. And this wasn't for 1 year. It was like for years. So I need to know how that became possible, and also how you maintained success and stayed relevant in the game.
It was hard. So there were others before me. One of the people I mentioned earlier, Omawanye Oriono, he was fantastic at promos. And but the thing is, I was shaped by what I had seen outside of Nigeria. So my perspective on delivery it wasn't common. Ahide was trained by the BBC. So what he was bringing wasn't common. Lord Frank was just returning from the US. So he brought a different flavor to what they were used to. So I had a mix of US. Ahide had a BBC background, and then Lord Frank came from the US. So when we stormed the market, it was fresh, it was new, it was different. We started to interpret jobs in a way that wasn't known. So we brought all kinds of razzmatazz and craziness. At the time, I remember Freeze was one of the biggest promo voices on radio. I don't know why, but I kept on saying to myself, I can touch that range that he can touch now. Malta Guinness, Coca-Cola, and and it was causing a havoc because I knew I did not have Ahide's voice. I did not have Lord Frank's voice. Two of them, they sound like the bowels of a ship. I don't know if you heard the song. YOLO, sold your call. That's how they sound. That's how they sound naturally. Me, I Kokuma decided to go after the everyday brands. So Maggie, Knorr, the everyday. Why don't you get yourself new diapers? Indomie. I was doing all those family brands because when you hear Ahide do Eva Premium Table Water, it sounds like Olga waiting now. What I want to drink now, and I took advantage of that because I was like, while it sounded fantastic in my ear, it scared them. They didn't know how to interpret using Lord Frank and Ahide for those brands. So all the Golda, Star, they would go there. Premium, bank, But then I realized that some of the banks didn't want to sound elderly. They wanted to be fresh. MTN changed their perspective. So they moved like, come alive with Airtel. Well, that was the Airtel. MTN had the better connection, your best connection. They didn't want to do your best connection. No, they wanted something fresh and, lively, hit. It was Glow that came with Rule Your World. But everybody wanted to be, And then, of course, there was Etisalat. Now you're talking. So everybody wanted to change the narrative.
You did the Etisalat, now you're talking voiceover?
No, that was not me. That's not me. The one I did for it was when they moved to Nine Mobile. Nine Mobile, here for you, here for Niger. But then Victor Ijoma took over. So it was, it was a change. And that change made us popular. So it wasn't that people were not getting jobs at all. No, it wasn't that. But you see, because we were the newest thing in town, we're the newest toys that every kid wanted to play with. And we had the consistency of delivering time after time. I can't tell, I had a very healthy rivalry with Ahide. It was crazy. Ahide, and I would lose a job to Ahide today. Tomorrow he will lose a job to me. It was that bad. And we met at Bode Thomas, and I said to him, "This business, Nami, are you? I go do you something." That's how it was for me and Ahide. Lord Frank was just codedly on his own, making his millions. He didn't want to say anything. We will bump into him somewhere. He will smile and do like, no, not say, but they collect in millions. They go. But yeah, that's how we stayed relevant. We changed the way we thought voiceovers were in Nigeria.
Very inspiring story, I must say. Also, just for the sake of the facts checkers, how did that statistic come about? 70% of the jobs in the industry, we're having a conversation about this before we started recording, where data in the industry, has been a challenge. But we're working on fixing those things now. You guys rocked and you're still rocking. People like us, we're just smelling and beginning to taste what it feels like to these jobs for these global and big brands that people like Eric and all of that dominated like a decade ago, and they still a drag on with us.
Before.
Well, I want to hear your perspective about this generation of voiceover artists. Like you used the expression someone.
The soundtrack for your era. The official soundtrack for you, the era of you guys, is because you guys ran rampage, man. I feel like grips, and it wasn't like one of these small trajectories. No, from here, we were respectful of, we wait,
Yeah.
we move out small. God will find, didn't care that there were structures, there were bars. Those guys who would climb buildings without going through staircases. Now, what you want to do? You people roboted that whole building. As you're climbing from the side panels, like, we're going to get to the top. We don't care. Staircase, no. Who said about sending our staircase? We don't care about staircases.
I think that also came from the fact that it felt like there was no into the industry. So it was like, let's just take any means we see,
But there was
'Cause I
an
remember
in, but
getting, and I felt so alone. Like, I was like, is there a community of people doing this thing? So it started off from just, oh, okay, let me post some of my work online and see who gets to see me. And maybe I'll find a way into, this industry. And that was how a lot of people got to know me. And then when I got to Voiceover Academy, they're like, Sarah, you're here. So I think it was just a thing of like, if they don't open the door, we'll jump through the window.
No, you people didn't do would jump through. That was my set. My set is if they don't open the door, jump through the window. Your own set is that if they don't open the door, we'll make a door through their wall. So what was happening was that you would have buildings that should have one door in, one door out, but then you guys will now put multiple doors. Like there were multiple doors just everywhere.
Yeah.
People that would have to follow chain of command to see. Next thing, people are actually sitting down in the man's office and like, oh, when I don't come, no vessel, welcome, come sit down. We waited as soon as not show us the way. We waited and did our own thing. So it was crazy like that. The only bit was because you guys didn't go through this that we went through, it scattered even the small structure that was remaining. It opened the market, but it scattered the structure because then, the norm was certain doors, before you get there. But as you guys scattered the thing, it also made it easy for some of the bad people in the industry, not the voice of artists now, I mean, advertisers. You made it for some of the bad members, the bad eggs in the industry to exploit the people who are just jumped in from nowhere. So the regularity and regulation of costs and fees suddenly slammed through the wind. And people were fighting to get noticed at the expense of trying to get a structure. So because they were trying to get noticed, some people were ridiculous amounts of money just because they felt as long as we got popular, we will get the money. But what sadly it did was that it fed some of the bad people that we had been, we had made them go on a drought, and all of a sudden they saw abundance.
I like the way you are putting it. We've had this conversation before in other circles. So this is what I would say. This is how I'll put it. We had to create doors because there were not enough doors, and the people who were in charge, they weren't ready for the tsunami that hit them. And it's not exclusive to even the voiceover industry, if we're going to be honest. Like, it was like a global thing where just before the pandemic year, 2018, 2019, something was building. Like, if you study the Nigerian entertainment space, 2017, 18, 19, Nigerian artists were touching some levels. You had people like Burna Boy coming from nowhere, Mr. Easy, and the space was already like, you could sense that something was about to break. And then the pandemic year happened. Everybody was at home. And I think that gave people reflection to say, okay, we've wasted 1 year of our life. The next year that came, or the end of 2020, everybody was running towards anything that made sense. So I think that the voiceover industry equally wasn't ready for that. And when that happened, I think the structures were weak. They couldn't accommodate. And you have people like me and Serah and just so many of us. I can list on and on. I think Femi was lucky to have Femi Biggs, based on his own history, served at the Voiceover Academy, right? So his own growth was kind of like really, there were a lot of people that didn't have people to guide them. For someone like me, before I discovered the Voiceover workshop in 2021, no, in 2020, yes, I discovered it in 2020. I had taken online courses from white folks. not knowing whom to turn to. Sarah,
Exactly.
so like I said, I think the space, the structure available, yeah, it wasn't ready. So we came into a place where we didn't even know the structure. So we created whatever. People just would price and charge anything they could charge. And even small businesses were also so much that they needed these services. The internet was becoming the place where you sell and buy, and the demands for voiceover artists was just so much, and these young people just filled the space. So this is my philosophy of how it happened, and I think we have now come to a point where all of us, plus people running inside, but people that are there before, we've now realized that if we continue this way, we would mess things up further. So it's time for us to come together and salvage what we've got. Okay, let's merge and build a structure for ourselves. So I think that's where we are. And I know that you said something, Eric, about how the industry has grown slower than the people in the industry. And that brings us to conversations about Avoa, conversations about what Avoa was doing all the while when things were happening. But I want to know your perspective about the present and the future. We know, the past, things could have been done better. What do you think is the way forward for our industry?
Before he answers that question, I'd love to also say
Okay,
something,
please go on.
Us jumping in and, finding our way.
Yeah.
Just like he said, as at the time when people like us started getting into the industry, there were most of the brands that you mentioned that you'd done voiceovers for, those were the big brands that could afford voiceover and the fees that came with it. Then smaller brands emerged, and then small voiceover artists too. And we were looking for experience and ways to get into the industry. So it's like, okay, yeah, I'd gladly help you, tell the story for your brand or advertise your brand, because that gives me experience and that gives you the service that you need, because they couldn't afford the experienced voiceover artists, and we weren't getting hired by the big brands. So it was kind of like, help me, I help you. And then also the due process that we would have followed, and the bodies that would have helped us to be in a space to do that due process, to get into that due process. Some of them were the ones offering really shitty pay for the voiceover, and then you always have people say it was because you people started collecting little amounts of money, it affected pricing in the industry. Like, some of the bodies that knew what voiceover artists should be collecting were the ones offering the crappy pay.
Yeah,
So,
because you
I
guys
remember
now.
going to Voiceover Academy and learning about negotiation and learning about the business of voiceover and realizing,
Go on.
you're kidding. People collect this much.
Sorry, you're going to say something. Eric
For me, up until then, even like up until that moment where I went
Sarah, can you hear us?
class, it had always just been about the past. I didn't know people earned,
Going to the conversation straight away.
Okay.
We've had a great talk. It's a long talk, actually, and as it is, we need to bring the conversation to an end because you can't have Eric and not talk extensively because there's just a lot of things to learn from him. And Eric, I must say thank you for your time. But just before I let you go, right, we had an email over the weekend and someone had a question to ask, and I felt like since we have one of the OGs who is 25 years old with us, why not have him respond to this? This is the kind of question. So by the way, a bit of background to this, it has to do with rates. I should also mention, for those who care to listen, that Eric was very instrumental in the creation of the rate card that the Association of Voiceover Artists in Nigeria put out. Very, very instrumental. So he has, a vast knowledge about rates and all of that. And therefore, I think you would do well to answer this. This person is a beginner who, according to her, she started doing voiceovers May last year. She's still, in and out. And now she wants to start working with rate cards. And when she reached out to me, or reached out to us last week, that also, so myself and my team at Voiceovers, we try to put together a rate card that is a more simplified version than the 15-page rate card of Avoa. So even at sending that to her to assist her she felt, or she's asking the question, do I think these prices are too high for a beginner who has never done an official voiceover job with a low budget studio? Or should she stick to the prices on the card? By the way, the prices on the card are same as the range
On
that
the
I've
F4E1
worked
card.
there. We just try to simplify what it looked like. So what do you think about this, Eric?
Okay, so it depends. This is what I would do. I would find out what their budget is. If I can work with the budget, maybe I could, because like you said, it's a low budget studio. So there's a possibility that they don't get, proper. They are like different levels of middlemen before them. So it's like this. The client reached out to an advertising agency or a production house. They didn't have the capability, so they reached out to somebody else, who reached out to somebody else, who reached out to somebody else, who reached out to her. So everybody is going to collect a cut in the budget that was initially released by the client. So because of that, they are lowballing because that's what they can offer, because that's what's been given to them in the first place. Now, what I would say is, as a beginner, and really I don't care about being beginner, because the minute you are trained, the minute you have a demo, the minute you can market yourself, you're a full-fledged voiceover artist. It is only you that knows that you're a beginner. They don't know that. So my suggestion would be, since they don't know that, you can tell them what your rates are, but then if you believe the amount presented is manageable, you could work with it, but letting them know that this is a one-time thing. I'm not doing this, because I want the money. I'm doing this because I want to build a relationship with you guys. However, these are the actual rates for voiceovers, because some people don't really realize that voiceover artists are also supposed to be educators. You're not just to get the job and get the job done and walk away. You're supposed to educate them at every point you see, in everything, in the art, in the finances, in the pronunciation of words. Because you see, some people will argue and say, he who pays the piper, it is the tune. I get it's cool. It's cool to feel that way. But you see, what you don't realize is, when you tell me to do something from an uninformed position, you also put me in a position of looking stupid. Because when somebody hears the job outside, they're not going to ask who produced you. You are the voice they are hearing. They're like, wait, to Eric, now you do that. You know if it's talk that word correctly. You know if it correct yourself. And now I'll not be the one looking stupid. How do I explain to them and those clients who said I should do it that way? So my reputation is also at stake. So it's the same way. If you're going to take any job that is lower than the required amount, it is your duty to also inform them that, look, I'm only doing this because I'm trying. Don't let them know that you're trying to build a repertoire. You're trying to build a profile for yourself. No. Give them the impression that I'm doing this because I'm trying to build a bridge. Because I believe your studio, though your studio might be, not so popular, I believe with my skills and your expertise, we can build your studio profile so that we can get better paying jobs. That's the way I would say it. So you educate them on the rate card that exists, and if you think that amount that they're offering you is okay, you take it. But it shouldn't be a norm, because what you don't realize is that people will always treat you the way they treat you if you don't stop them. So if they're paying you, let's say, assume that it's a radio, and radio right now, the minimum for radio is 100,000 naira. Now, let's say they are offering you 40,000 naira. Now, 40,000 naira, if you were to pick the phone and call me, I most likely would start suggesting maybe my neighbors outside for that money. If I have a relationship with you, I feel collector for say, okay, make a put inside motor for fuel. But I will let you know. Now, because of, say, we know each other, not though try them outside though. And I will tell you categorically, if you go outside and you tell them you pay me 40,000, well, like the thunder that will strike you.
But
So, yes, deny, deny, deny. I'm protecting myself as well because it will amaze you. In my career, I have worked for some top tier clients that pay shitty money. But I let them know that because of the amount of work you're giving me, I will take your fee. But bear this in mind. Person pick phone, call you, say, how much did you pay Eric? If you like, they'll born you a tell them say you pay them that amount you give me. I will ruin you. I will ruin you. So my advice, one, don't tell them you're a beginner. You don't have it. So you go there with a bold face and like, okay, so this is the other rates. I'm only accepting this rate you're giving to me because I want to help this studio. I want to build a relationship because I believe that you guys have what it takes to be a top level studio in the future. After playing that card, you do the job, use that as practice, so that you're learning new things against the next job that comes. That's my advice. If the money is too low, cut and bill. Educate them, but then bill. In this manner, I would say, these are the rates, and I really appreciate that you considered me, but I'm sorry, your rates are too low for me. I could suggest some people to you, but for me, I think your rates are really too low. And then, you leave them there. But if you want to use it as an opportunity to build your profile, then you can, it's too low, but I will accept it because I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to build a relationship with you because I believe that you guys have the potential to get bigger clients. And when you have bigger clients, I'll be the one to lend my voice to those bigger clients. So let me take this job. But going forward, after this job, this is the rate I'm asking for. Even if you can't pay me this amount, pay me a good percentage of that.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to answer the question, also showing your experience in it. I also just did not want to cut you short while you were answering, because I think the question also suggested that she's saying that she has a low budget studio. I think that was what she meant. It's a situation, working for clients, maybe standard or otherwise, but working with a low budget studio as a beginner, is it fair to charge the same rates, or should she reduce the rates because our quality, our output is, what do you think?
Okay, so with this caveat you've added, I would suggest to her to send a recording to you guys for you to evaluate quality of her sound. If the quality of her sound isn't so detectable as low quality, then she has no right saying that she has low quality equipment. If it sounds good enough, if she has the right environment, she has the right, because you see, the funny thing is, in one of those international webinars I've attended, they'll tell you having an expensive mic is not as good as having the right environment to use it in. If you have a $1,000 mic and you're using it in a shitty environment, you're still going to get the same shitty recording, because what that $1,000 mic is going to do is enhance the sound of your shittiness. But if you have a good, but if you have, because I've done, I'm using a Samsung, so I have this sound recorder on my phone. And sometimes when somebody says to me, Eric, I need an audition, I don't have the time to put on my laptop and put on my DAW and start editing. So what I just do, I just put on the sound recorder, enter the booth, because I know the ambience is right, and I know the exact mic placement for my phone. So I bend my phone in such a way that I'm not too loud. Sometimes I have this removable, I have the chaotica eyeball here. I have the chaotica eyeball. So I remove the sound filter from the chaotica eyeball, and I put it between my mouth and my phone, and I voice it. Some people, I have actually seen a job I did as an audition that ended up, the client said, oh, they loved it, that, you know what, we'll use it like that. And I'm like, I will do you a better version. I will do it with my, I said, no, we like the quality. We're using it immediately. People are trying this thing like this. It's my reputation, no. But by the time the producer worked on it and put it out there, I was like, okay.
That's not bad.
I don't sound that bad. It could be that. It has a nice face. It could cover up for the quality of microphone she's using. If she's using a lapel mic, it's just a matter of learning where to place it so that you don't have all those pops. And you could even get one of those small foams and put it on top of the lapel mic, which will remove a lot of those high frequencies, and then place it It was last year. No, it was the conference of 2 years ago when the president of Wovo, was it Wovo? Yes, when he was teaching about mic placement, and he said, if you're going to put a microphone, you put it from your nose level.
Yeah.
Because there is no way you do that is going up here. You can you can feel it underneath, but if you put it up here, you're not feeling anything. So just imagine turning your microphone upside down. Let me disconnect my my Blue Yeti. So if you had your microphone like exactly as Tcode has it, so you just have it in this manner, and then you tilt it slightly to avoid speaking directly into it with your high frequency and plosives. Yes, this is excellent. This is excellent. So if you put that microphone, no matter how low budget it is, and you have the right space, you've done the work. So my suggestion is that let us send her audio to you guys to evaluate. And then from the evaluation, you'll be able to let her know that, okay, based on what we heard, you have a reasonable sound. Maybe you might need to treat your space a little more, add more clothes around you when you're recording and behind you to avoid, bounce back of sound frequencies. I did a lot of crazy things. I've taken this plastic, I've cut through them and put it on my shoulder, as in I've worn the plastic dustbin and I wear a duvet on top of it and then stand in front of my kiosk microphone. Yes, because
and I thought I did crazy things.
Same here.
I've done it.
I thought I did crazy things.
I was in a hotel for about 2 weeks. The hotel generator was noisy. Big Geno, because the glass they used for the windows were not soundproof. So whenever I recorded with my pillow fort, it wasn't helping. So I took my Celtica eyeball, put the microphone inside, and then I went to the local market, bought a dustbin, and then cut through the dustbin so that the dustbin would just fall on my head. And then I put the duvet of the hospital on top of it. So that removed all frequencies coming from behind me. So I knew that the only frequencies that the microphone would pick were mine. You do these things. How much is the bucket? And scissors that you use now cut the thing to fit your head shape. If you don't have, if you're recording in your house and you don't have a duvet, you can always get a pair of jeans and cover up all those spaces. And then in front of your microphone, this is what it will look like in front of your microphone. You won't see any other thing, but guess what? It's doing the work because all those external frequencies are not getting in. So it's not rocket science now. Technology has evolved with that. They made it easier for us. It's just that dollar is crashing. If not, Naira is crashing. If not, all these things are right there, accessible to all of us. And she doesn't have to get a high level microphone. If she has the right space, you can use all those church mics and get your job done.
Okay. Thank you so much, Eric. Speaking about church mic, I started with an SM58, which is actually could be called a church mic, but actually is a classic. Right now, the mic costs over 100K, and yet it's still sitting pretty somewhere here. But at the time I bought it, it was 50K or so, 55,000
Wait,
naira.
let me see the mic you're talking about. Let me see the mic you're talking about.
This is it.
It's like 35,000 naira.
Yeah. I bought it at the time it was 55K. And now it's over 100,000 naira. So, yeah, when it comes to audio talks, it's usually very technical, sensitive, because there's no one size fits all. It starts with the room. What does the room sound like if you don't have a studio space? For me, I think what I tell people is the best solution is if you can locate a studio around you, that would really go a long way. Why is that? You're also going to have experience of what a studio looks like. You start paying attention to the mics that they're using, how they're editing. There'll be a level of direction. You get familiar with studio, mic placement. If you're just going to use your phone and stay in your cocoon and not relate with other people, you will grow in your lack of knowledge, in your ignorance. So
You have enough money to afford a studio session.
yeah, well, true. So everything Eric has said is really, really important because it will save you a lot when you are in situations where you're stranded. Note that most of this advice, they were birthed from him being almost stranded, right? Not that he did not make an attempt to be. He built his own home studio 2016. So, and I'm saying this because some people now say, why am I going to now? Why do I have to spend money and buy this one? No, you need to really do that.
You know,
like
at some point you need to grow into it. You need to grow into having a proper studio.
Yeah, you need to. Yeah, so these are makeshifts. But so how it then affects your pricing is that I tell people, if you record with just a normal phone versus you go to a studio to record, the difference will be clear for someone, especially
Obviously,
who has a trained ear.
Yes.
So it's like, if I say I'm a model, like I am a very good model, a world-class model, I'm one of the best, and all I have to show for it is one picture that I snapped with one of these poor Android devices. It doesn't change the fact that I'm very good. The technology that captured me doesn't portray it to be so because the pixels are not good and it's not sharp and all of that. And then you can take someone who is not as good as me, right? But with the best camera picture and everything, and the person is looking stunning. So the technology also really matters in how it shows you to the clients. When I audition for gigs, I try. Yeah, we can say something. I know you have an objection.
Okay, so the reason why I made that suggestion was because I tried that option. Don't forget that a lot of these studios have time limits, and some of these clients don't.
Yeah. Mm.
So if for instance now she says, "Oh, I'm available 24/7," and then the job comes at 7 p.m. and studio has closed, what do you do?
True. You have to just do it.
I'm not saying that is actually a fantastic option. If you can find a studio around you, yes, that's fantastic. But then you also have to bear in mind that you'll be the one paying the initial cost of production until they pay you. Because if you're new to a client or new to a studio or an agency, they would want you to at least do some of the committance first before they start paying you and then believing in you or trusting in you. So if you don't have that money, it's a problem. I actually accept that, but I always say to people, always have a backup plan. And that backup plan is having somewhere you can record at home. The good thing is that if you save some small money, you can actually get a USB microphone, put it directly to your laptop and get the job done. There are even some of these ridiculous microphones I've seen. The sound quality isn't so wonderful, but let me give you an example. This is one that I got on Jumia. I don't remember how much it is. As in, it's one of these types where, you want to communicate with the person in the studio.
Wow, this might.
Yes. Now, the quality is not so wonderful. But when you put the right kind of foaming in front of it and you're in the right kind of space, magic happens. And there are so many cheap microphones like that on Jumia. You start small, then upgrade as you grow. Because obviously, when you start to grow and you've not upgraded your equipment, they will think you're not serious.
Okay, so I with that said, I think where we should hit the nail on the head is, if I am going to start small like that with one of these very basic low budget mic, is it fair for me with that kind of quality to now collect the standard? I think that's where the question is bordering.
If you can pull off the performance with that quality, you have every right to ask for that money.
And the client is satisfied. Okay. I think that's
the main thing.
That's fair.
Because I've heard some top level stuff on radio but it was you could obviously hear the recordings, especially all those ones where they would use influencers or they would use celebrities to record them in bad spaces, and then the sound engineer has to do a lot of noise reduction to remove the backgrounds. But guess what? Somebody can do it with a poor mic in a good space and get a better quality. We're not even going too far. All those USB mics, you could buy that with you test it out. find out the right part of your blouse or top that would give you the best sound, then get the right space, and then you're good to go. It's just for you it's an entry level to getting the jobs that would now buy you the real kind of equipment.
I like the way you put it anyway. I mean, for me, someone like me and Sarah, who has done this at a level that required that optimal, high quality, recording on Iano and some other projects, it's so, we tend to now become very unforgiving when it comes to this.
Oh, yes. It's required to be unforgiving.
We get so used to that level that, but I think I'll task myself and whoever is interested, we need to, and again, that's one of the challenges we have in our industry. Not so many people are, if you go abroad, for instance, or if you just go on YouTube, you have readily enough people who are going to do reviews on these mics, right? So for me personally, I hope this year I'm able to take these different types of mics, this different quality. Remember, Sarah, we wanted to test one, but we're going to go to do that much later. So this way, we're able to find the options that can work for beginners and recommend them. If you have 100,000 naira, this is what you can start with. 200,000, 400, 500, like that. Because this real equipment are not cheap anymore. This guy is over 100K. This guy is almost 500K. This guy also is around that amount. This guy is almost 250, like 230 or so. So these things are really quite. My dear, it's around 230, depending on the vendor. Is right now is around 230. The USB version too should be somewhere around.
I know Rode NT1 is now about 350, and it's crazy. SM7B is about 170 now.
Yeah.
Phone and just get the recording done. So I think just start, and as you grow, you upgrade, because don't for 1 minute think that you can just keep growing and then still keep using the same equipment. Like you said, it will not take you seriously. Imagine you now get the opportunity to do a big project and then you don't now have the equipment necessary for that kind of project. It's not going to look good.
And I would even advise that people should watch reviews on YouTube before they buy any mic, any equipment, so that they have a taste of what it would feel like and how it will serve them.
I disagree on that. I might disagree on that a bit. One of the things,
because of the use of the mic.
Yes, because everything, the thing is that if you are an experienced sound person, yes, you can watch it. But you see, some people don't even know where their voice fits, whether their voices are warm or dark or bright.
Exactly.
So you need to, first things first, you need to know what kind of voice you have before watching such reviews.
Yeah.
And I noticed that most of the people that even put up mic reviews actually are singers. You don't find so many that's actually review voice.
Yeah.
And that's very different.
Yeah. So in my own case, if you know the ones, for instance, what's his name again? Booth Junkie is the go-to person for voiceover artists. There is also Judge the Tech. As a matter of fact, you should listen to the podcast. I'll remember and put in the show notes. They just talk about tech for voiceovers. Voiceover tech. Judge the Tech. This other guy that Eric referenced the other time is an old man that talked about the placements. I don't just remember how I
Uncle
that should be Mark Scott.
Uncle Roy.
As I was about to say his name, it slipped my mind.
Is his full name? I'm trying to remember.
Uncle Roy Yeltsin.
Roy Yeltsin. Is that his name? I can't remember, but he has a mustache like this. Yeah, I think it's Uncle Roy.
That's what's his name? But it's Uncle Roy that does for Mark Scott.
That's Mark Scott. This one is, there are two. They run a podcast. They talk about all the tech.
Yes, I know the person you're talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, we've come a long way. This is officially the longest.
What's wrong?
I decided to check the cost of my current microphone.
You will see that you're a millionaire.
That microphone goes now for 1.5 million. How?
Oh my gosh!
If you were to buy it in the US and change to Naira, it's about 1.3. But if they are importing it for you, it's about 1.5 million.
Wow. Eric, which mic is that?
The AKG C214.
Oh, AKG also has great mics in their high-end
AKG is
mic. I
great.
know that one looks like the Lewitt. How much was it when you bought it?
I'm sure it was like 300. That's how I feel
300.
the U87 now, the Neumann U87.
No, don't go there.
PLM 103.
No, the thing is still achievable. We see that U87. No,
Mm.
for me to buy it, I have to be earning at
At this
least.
point, if you get mm-hmm.
Yes, what you're about to say is
No,
what
you're
I'm
about to say a
thinking.
figure now.
Yes, you have to be earning at least as a Nigerian voiceover artist
I say actually.
because
I feel like at this point, even if you buy it, you are just getting it for bragging rights.
yeah, you just say, "Mommy, I've made it." Even if nobody calls you to record with it, "Mommy, I've made it. I bought a U87."
Sarah,
Oh my
remember
gosh.
when Ahmed said he was earning like $21,000 a year on Upwork? No, it's just making sense to me though. Ahmed bought TLM
The TLM 103.
103, the Neumann. It got this headphone as well. One that
That's
we saw.
the Audio Technica M50 and the Biodynamic 990.
See, yeah. Shout out to people who
When
are
I grow
able
up,
to.
when I grow up, I'm still 25. I still have enough time. When I grow up,
Shout out to voiceover artists in Africa. You know, it's not easy, like you said, Eric. We do a lot to get the quality that we deliver at the end of the day. So shout out to everybody. Anyway, it's been a great conversation and the longest so far for the record. Eric holds the record.
This is a new record.
I don't want to say how long we'll be here recording. Because our audience are not going to see more than 2 hours of this, but we know we've done way more than that.
You know.
Yeah, so thank you guys. Thank you so much. And with that, we say thank you so much, Eric, for your time and
So much, Eric.
sharing your knowledge.
Such a pleasure having you around. I'm glad we got to have the conversation we had today and we got to speak about certain things because these things need to be talked about. So I'm so glad that you've also shared your deep wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
thank you for having me. Thank you.
so much.
Really an honor. Thank you.
Yeah.
Stop all crying.
So so let me quickly drop this that you guys are you can send us your emails like we treated one today. It was so fun talking about it. If you have other questions, send it to us via email at everythingvoiceovers@gmail.com. We'd love to really take them. And you can also support the podcast via our Show Me Love platform. Check the show notes. You find how you can support. We will be from time to time, informing you about voiceover events and stuff to watch out for, and other voiceover related news that you should know. For instance, we're looking forward to something in Abuja real soon. I'm not sure we should spill the tea yet.
Let's not talk about it yet.
Yeah, so when it's time,
just be prepared.
Yeah.
Be prepared for the chance of a lifetime.
So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week. I'm Tcode, and I'm signing out. Sarah?
I'm Sarah.
Signing out. All right, guys. Bye.
Until next time.
Yeah.